Well, as we've been saying this morning, Shamima Begum and other British people held currently in Syria should be allowed to come back here to the UK, with the conditions branded as inhuman and degrading where they are at the moment and have been for years. That's according to a new independent counter-terrorism review.
Yeah, the former East London schoolgirl currently living in a detention camp after she fled her home 10 years ago at the age of 15. She left to join Islamic State, ISIS. She wants to come home, but she's had her citizenship revoked and has lost a series of legal challenges. We spoke to her for her first live interview back in 2021. Let's remind you what she said.
I am asking the British people to forgive me because I made a mistake at a very young age. You know, most young people don't know what they want to do with their lives, and they are very confused, and they can easily fall into things like this. And I know it's very hard for the British people to try and forgive me because, you know, they've lived in fear of ISIS. They've lost loved ones because of ISIS, but I also have lived in fear of ISIS, and I also have lost loved ones because of ISIS. Honestly, the only crime I think I committed was being dumb enough to come to ISIS, and even that can be refuted because I was 15 when I came, and you can't, you know, judge a 15-year-old for making a mistake.
Well, let's hear what the Home Secretary at the time, Sajid Javid, said.
I'm not going to get into details of the case, but what I will say is that you certainly haven't seen what I saw.
So there was worse?
You haven't seen what I saw.
OK.
So you maintain there is a national security risk?
And let me say this. I think if you did know what I knew, as I say, because you are sensible, responsible people, you would have made exactly the same decision. Of that, I have no doubt.
Well, that was some years ago. Here we are now. Should she be allowed now to return to the UK? Joining us to talk about it is Baroness Saeeda Wassi, who is one of the commissioners of the review that says she should come home and that she's been made a scapegoat, while the Director of Popular Conservatism, Mark Littlewood, thinks that Shamima Begum simply brought this on herself and should stew in her own juice, basically. So, Mark, let's start with you. No allowance at all, then, for the fact that she was radicalised at 15, a schoolgirl, when she joined ISIS and went out there. And no allowance for the fact that she has said repeatedly, she told us in the interview that we did with her in 21, that she would go to jail for as long as a judge in this country decided. She would stand trial, a criminal trial, and would take her punishment. No allowance for that at all.
I'm not saying no allowance, some allowance for that. It goes to the balance. It goes to a judgment in the round. I think the fact that she was 15 rather than 25 when she left is something to be considered. So I'll make some allowance for that, but not sufficient allowance. She did make this decision as somebody over the age of criminal responsibility. She stuck with it into adulthood. I found the interview clip that you played from her that she had only done something dumb enough to join ISIS. So it was a sort of teenage error. She joined a mass murdering terrorist group that has slaughtered tens of thousands of people. This isn't like falling in with some bad people at your local school and getting into a little bit of trouble.
Can I just cut in there? A group skilled in radicalising young people, a very, very developed techniques in brainwashing young people. You have to take that into account, don't you?
But it has been taken into account. So due process has been followed. Sajid Javid on your clip there when he was Home Secretary obviously couldn't disclose to you everything he'd been told by MI5,
no.
But the Home Secretary made that decision. It's not just an arbitrary political decision. The Supreme Court backed that decision. We've been through due process here. All allowances have been made. All of that evidence has been balanced. And in my personal view, having not seen the sort of evidence the Home Secretary saw, the right decision has been made. She's no longer a British citizen.
And I think in our current poll, which we're running online, we can see the results, which is that pretty much most people agree with you. Baroness Saeeda Wassi, it's your report, which is proposed she comes home. Why?
I think the question that we need to answer is one before that. I mean, look, I have no truck with ISIS. I was on an ISIS kill list for 4 years. These were people who wanted to target me. But the concern that I and other commissioners, and remember, we had on this commission the former global counter-terrorism director from MI6, Richard Barrett. You know, we had the former Lord Chief Justice of Northern Ireland, former Attorney General, serious people. You know, former Chief Police streets of Manchester. So the concern that I have is in this country, we currently have a system whereby you are not stripped of your citizenship for the criminality that you may have committed or alleged to have committed, but you are stripped of your citizenship because of the heritage of your parents and grandparents. So had Shamima Begum's father not been born in Bangladesh, then Shamima Begum would not have been stripped of her citizenship. And in this country, we must have equal citizenship. We must all as citizens be equal before the law. And therefore, what we should be punished for is our criminality, not on our heritage. And the interesting case that you had with Shamima Begum was that not that she was a Bangladeshi national, not that she had ever applied for Bangladeshi citizenship, that she had an option to apply for Bangladeshi citizenship, which she could have exercised up to the age of 21. And had she so exercised, the Bangladeshi government may have potentially offered her citizenship. The Bangladeshi government turned around and said, even if she applies, we wouldn't have granted it. So effectively, on a tenuous potential probability of a citizenship, of which there are, by the way, millions of people in this country, including my children and their children, not because, even though we have now had in this country 70 years of living in this country and have served this country consistently during that time, the fact that our great-great-grandfather at some point came from somewhere else in the country,
I understand
my
what
children
you're saying,
would be treated differently to the way Mark's
But
would
I
be.
think that actually people voting in the poll, they're not bothered about the citizenship issue. They just don't want her back. They think she's a threat. And if you listen to what Sajid Javid said there back in 2021, he thinks that she is a threat. Back then, 4 years ago, if we'd seen what he'd seen, sounds like we'd all be terrified.
I think there were lots of people on the commission who saw what Sajid and others have seen over the years in relation to what is happening on the counter-terrorism.
What he'd
that's
seen?
Happening on the counter-terrorism network. And it was also important for us to hear from Sajid Javid, which we did do on the commission.
Do you know what he's talking about?
I do know what he's talking about.
And it doesn't deter you from saying she should...
I know there are people in this country right now who pose a huge risk. People who are British nationals and who live in our country pose a huge risk. And the good thing that we have in this country are amazing intelligence services who, through a process of surveillance and other measures, make sure that they keep us safe every single day. And at the moment, what's interesting is there are many people who went out to ISIS, went out to fight, many men who have since returned and live in this country. What we are talking about in this report in terms of repatriation are about 20 to 30 women and 30 to 40 children, predominantly under the age of 10. And it is actually quite shocking that some of the most vulnerable, women and children, have been left out there in the Syrian desert, where many more serious and more dangerous people are actually back in our country.
I must ask you this. Knowing what you know, which you can't disclose here, but is what the then Home Secretary was referring to, do you think if she came back here, do you think she should go to jail?
I think that she should be tried and she should be convicted and she should be imprisoned for any crime that we can actually prove. But if we cannot, we also have a system of surveillance and protection measures and other orders that we can put in place where we can make sure that people who pose high risk to our nation are watched and out of control.
Mark, do you think this is going to make anyone feel more likely to want her come back?
No, I don't think so. I find that extraordinary. I mean, theoretically, we could look at hundreds of people across the world who pose a threat to Britain and say, well, let's ship them all into Britain, where we can keep a beady eye on them. I don't understand why Shamima Begum should be a particular example, should be treated any particularly
They're not British
differently.
nationals, though, Mark. They're not British
she's had
nationals.
a citizenship stripped, right?
Yeah, but
that's been a due legal process. She's had it stripped.
Yeah, but that's my question. Why should it be that her stripping of citizenship should be based not upon her criminality, but upon the heritage of her parents and grandparents?
Well, because all of our citizenship is. If I was born in Riyadh rather than Reading, I would have Saudi Arabian citizenship as well as
No,
British
but she wasn't born in Riyadh or Bangladesh. She was born in East London.
There are ancestral elements to citizenship. We're not all the same.
But they're not
Some people have
ancestral
dual,
elements.
some people don't have dual. I don't. I only have British citizenship.
She didn't have dual citizenship.
No, she had an ability. I don't have the ability to apply for Bangladeshi citizenship.
Jacob...
This was all tried in court, Saida. It was tried and tested. It's been done. We've gone through due process. We can't just keep revisiting every single decision. It wasn't just a political decision by the Home Secretary at the time. It was endorsed by the Supreme Court, our highest court in the land. It seems to be simpatico with public opinion, not just your poll this morning, but every poll I've seen on it. The British people, the British government and the highest British court in the land are not up for bringing Shamima Begum back.
And there we have
well, Jacob Rees-Mogg is probably the best quote that I can do on this, where he said that we have tragically created a situation where we have a two-tier system, where we have different classes of citizenship, and that is not cohesive to having a united society.
Thank you both very much indeed.
Interesting. Thank you both. The Home Office spokesperson said our priority remains maintaining the safety and security of the UK, and we will robustly defend any decision made in doing so.